Hindus are the descendants of the oldest civilization on earth. This is evidenced in the Saraswati Sindhu civilization that has evolved in Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, Lothal, and Dholavira, enduring changes and challenges to become what it is today. Numbering over 1.2 billion spread across the world, modern Hindus, drawing upon their ancient heritage, have much to offer humanity in all fields, resulting in harmony, peace, and prosperity for all. In the fields of economy, education, governance, youth, culture, and arts, Hindus have shone brightly. The World Hindu Congress provides a platform where Hindu leaders, activists, thinkers, and influencers come together. Here, new avenues open up to address areas of strategic importance. The inaugural World Hindu Congress 2014 was held in New Delhi, themed Sangachadvam Samvadadvam, bringing together 1,800 delegates from 53 countries. World Hindu Congress 2018 was held in Chicago, themed Sumantrite Suvikrante. It saw more than 2,500 delegates from 60 countries, making it a landmark event towards creating a global Hindu footprint.
I'm extremely happy. Today, when I'm able to come.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I request everyone to settle down. We are about to start session 4. Please settle down.
Welcome everyone to session 4. Building an alternative narrative. This is the topic for today. The session chair would be Shri Rahul Roushan, CEO OpIndia Bharat. I would like to call upon speakers as well. Captain Praveen Chaturvedi, Shri Abhijit, founder and CEO Prachyam Studios Bharat, Shri Abhijit Chavda, podcaster, geophysical, political analyst and scientist Bharat, Shri Ravi Chand, film and TV producer, director and writer, Australia. Shri Rahul Roushan is an author, political commentator, and entrepreneur. He has written the best-selling book, Sanghi Who Never Went to a Shakha, and is currently serving as the CEO of OpIndia.com. Rahul is a maths graduate and holds a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism from IIMC, New Delhi. He worked as a TV journalist for around 2.5 years before pursuing MBA at IIM Ahmedabad. Later, Rahul founded 2 websites, first being crickstock.com, a virtual gaming website based on cricket, another being Faking News, a news satire portal. He sold off both the ventures before joining OpIndia. Over to you, Shri Rahulji. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start while people having tea and coffee over there. Hopefully they would warm up with hot coffee and hot tea. And, so thank you to everyone for turning up. And thank you, World Hindu Congress and Hindu Media Forum for having us here. The session, this panel, we are going to talk about building an alternate narrative and the challenges that are involved. The idea would be obviously that we share our journey, how we started, and what have been the challenges that we face, so that if some of you want to do something similar, you can learn from our success and failures. That obviously is the idea, and then we also discuss those challenges. We could perhaps find some common threads as well as threats actually, and we can try to maybe come up with some solutions, some actionable points if that's there. Otherwise, obviously, it's always is very nice to interact with people and to share our experience. So that is what we would like to be doing. Oh, where is the timer? I mean, people say I'm running out of time and I'm running out of time or something. Oh, okay, you are the timer. Okay. So that's what I was wondering. So, because I have that what I want to say in my mind, but yeah, obviously it's always nice to have a visual cue that, okay, I should wrap up or I should accelerate. So, yeah, so coming back to the panel, we in a way, it's a very, we kind of cover a good spectrum. I run a website where, obviously it's a news and opinion website. The challenges there running such a website is obviously very unique in itself. And then, you have people who are in podcasts, because that's one thing, obviously, everyone wants to do these things these days. And it's understood to be something that can come very easily. You don't need to have a very high investment or something. That's something that you might think that karna kya hai, just put on a phone or a camera and you start. But is that so easy? Is that really how you go about it? So obviously Abhijit would be talking about that. And then obviously, apart from say news or podcast, you go into the realm of documentaries. You go into the realm of audiovisual production. And that's where the other two guests, the speakers, Prachyam, the Praveen ji and Ravi ji, both of them have been doing documentaries, and they can, share their understanding, their challenges. And both, in a way, even though both are doing documentaries, their approach and their experience is very varied. One is catering to has come from an Indian perspective, from a rather Bharatiya perspective, and catering to the Bharatiya audience. And Ravi ji has to think about the international audience, the kind of narrative that has been set against Bharat or Hindu Dharma, and how he, kind of faces that challenge. So I'm assuming, I'm rather very confident that this is going to be a really, a session where you can learn a lot. So I would start with my own thing. When we talk about narrative, I mean, what is narrative? It is really storytelling in short. When you talk about building alternate narrative and all. So you are basically saying that you are going to tell a story, you are going to narrate an event which is different from how it has been done till now. Now that indeed is a very challenging affair. It might look like, okay, so what? Everyone is telling a story, you are also telling a story, and you decide to tell a story in a different manner. What could be really the challenge? Just go out and say that. It doesn't work that way. It becomes very difficult. And that's why you remember that, 4 or 5 years back, or maybe 10 years back, or even in fact, 4, 5, 6 years back, when, say, people on the dharmic side, or the so-called right-winger, when they didn't like something being shown in a movie or in a web series. Web series are a recent thing. Mostly, let's talk about movies or books. And they would say protest about it, or they would say that, okay, this thing should not have been done. What would the typical liberal reaction would be? Go make your own movies. Why don't you write your own books? because they knew that, when they were throwing these challenges, they knew that it was not easy to do it. That, I can just tell them that go do this, they will not be able to do it, and there was a reason why they believed so. And indeed, it was so difficult to do it. And now when our own people have actually started making movies, when actually they have started writing books, then suddenly it's them who want to censor, it's them who want to put bans and all. So we have to understand that the initial challenge that they used to throw, what made them so confident that, these guys, when I say that go make your own movie, go write your own book, or make your own story, why they can't do it? Because the way, almost in everything that we do, whether we talk about the websites or documentaries or podcasts and all that, it's the entire thing, the entire ecosystem of forces that, or dynamics rather, that make these happen are controlled by them. So it becomes very difficult to come up with it. So let me, obviously others will start with, share their experiences. So let me give a brief about OpIndia. So essentially, when you start a news website, what do you do? It's simple website. These days you have open source things like WordPress and all, and you can go and start it. But there is a lot of problems, So the biggest challenge that comes with this is actually, what we are doing is of adjectives. The biggest challenge we face is of adjectives. I have been already given a cue that just 1 or 2 minutes left. But you imagine that when people, when students, or rather the leftists of, like SFI and all that, in any campus, when they protest, media headlines would be students protest. When the other students from the other side of the ideology protest, media headlines would always be ABVP protest. So how are ABVP guys not students? Why is it always that what the leftists are doing, they are protesting as students, they are protesting as women, whereas when it comes to here, then ABVP protects, Durga Vahini protests. So the biggest challenge comes with the adjectives, and this is very small thing, like who is controversial. Say these currently in Netherlands, Geert Wilders has won. So far right leader Geert has won, or something like that. Okay, now I'm getting distracted with the. so the biggest thing is, and our own people have become so influenced by these adjectives that when we hire, say, a new talent and we ask him to go write some copy, those ingrained adjectives, those ingrained style sheet that we call is so much ingrained that we find it very difficult to train a new person, that you have to go beyond it. And that's what OpIndia could do. It was very, very difficult. So, for us, we would actually mention, say, controversial journalist Barkha Dutt, and that's why we are hated. So we started using the same kind of adjectives that they used about us, we started using about them. The entire style sheet we inverted. So obviously there are many challenges, as Nupur was saying, that we still cannot, the other side can use Hindu mob burns, whatever. It hardly happens, but let's assume that even if something like that happens, they can publish it. But you cannot say Muslims did it. Then, because if you go into any of those social media guidelines or Google guidelines, which you just, when you sign up and you press I accept the terms, this is, a protected category they have defined. And Hindus somehow are never there in the protected category. So you can say anything about Hindus, it doesn't violate any hate speech and all that. The moment you start saying the same thing about the other people, you go into the supposedly hate speech zone, and n number of things happen. We have been demonetized by Google for almost 2 or 3 months. So that means we cannot run Google ads, one of the staple food for anything that you go into digital domain. And we pinned them that, okay, tell us where we erred. And they couldn't see. Then the only thing, and it was so obvious that they were doing it in a completely biased and influenced by some people, that when we pinned them that show us the article where we are doing anything that is hate speech or that says promoting violence or anything. They couldn't do. What they could finally come up with, that some of the comments left by users were abusive. Now technically, when the comments are there on your website, they become your content, I mean, technically in digital space. So for people who have been following OpIndia for some time, you might have seen that earlier we used to have the comment section. Now for around 2 or 3 years, we don't have a comment section. So we said, okay, we cannot really fight with Google so much. Even if Google was answering our questions, it was because we could I mean, I don't need to explicitly say, but we could pull some strings and make them answer that, okay, you give us the explanation, otherwise they simply don't explain to people when they delete, or the censor. So then we went for that thing that, okay, let us remove the comments, but we would, okay. So there are n number of challenges. We would discuss that when when the panel goes out when I'm asked specific question. So next I invite Captain Praveen Chaturvedi. He is the founder and CEO of Prachyam Studios. Obviously, you must have seen the videos. They go pretty viral. And he's a merchant marine officer who has turned filmmaker. Guided by his guru, Praveen ji explored Bharat's philosophy, culture, and sciences. His exposure to the world of filmmaking during his naval tenure sparked an enduring passion, promoting him to pursue formal cinematic training at USC and UCLA. Subsequently, he worked with some of the top studios and professionals of Hollywood. Praveen ji returned to Bharat in 2012 with the intent of fusing his passion for Bharat's vibrant culture and heritage with the realm of cinema. He first co-founded a film production company and later has launched Prachyam, which is now an OTT. Not so great in reading out, or am I? So whatever, so Prachyam, Praveen ji, your turn now. Let's hear from you.
Thank you, Rahul ji. Jai Shri Ram. Jai Hind. Thank you. A lot of thanks to the organizers of World Hindu Congress, World Hindu Foundation, for giving me and all of us this opportunity to be here. The time is short. Having made more than 150 films and videos, I just selected very few of them, the shortest ones, to show it to you. I thought, my films should speak on my behalf. And it is said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a film is worth 1,000,000 words. So I will just start my presentation with a film. This presentation is in 3 parts. What we were or what we are as Hindus, what we became or what we were made to become, the second part. And the third part is what we should do for Hindu resurgence through the media, through the medium of films, audiovisual medium, and in the best possible way. So I'll start with a short film on this. Oops. One second. Yeah.
Once upon a time, thousands of years ago, in a mighty land surrounded by seas from 3 sides, ruled the lions. This was their kingdom. But there were the hyenas too around this kingdom, and they had a different plan. They marched on the lion kingdom, looted, killed, and devoured it. The warrior lions stood tall, fought like real brave hearts for 300 solid years. But numbers do matter. just when things were looking very bleak, there came the jackals from the west. By now, 1,000 years had gone by, and the grandeur of the Lion Kingdom was just a distant memory. But every hero's journey has a turning point, right? The lion cubs started feeling the itch, the yearning for the golden past. Rebellion began. But now, the hyenas had the jackals by their side. They made a deal with the hyenas of giving them a prized piece of land before they were forced out by the lions. The throne of the lion land went to the old lions, who had grown close to the hyenas and jackals. The old lions are gone, and so is their throne. But their legacies are kept alive, pandering to the distant hyenas and jackals, conniving to reclaim the throne. The young cubs are purposely kept in the dark to prey on them. It's high time for these cubs to wake up and be ready to take on the looming threats. The real question is, will you? Yes, you. Because you are the cub. You belong to a great warrior tradition. So wake up and protect your Punya Bhumi.
Thank you. So, a short story of my journey. I was, as you know, a marine officer captain. I went to pursue my passion to learn filmmaking. It started from Canada, and then I went to US to study. And while I was working in Hollywood, I noticed one thing, that the audio-visual medium, the medium of films, was being used as a weapon by the left, by the communist, by the anti-Bharat forces, and there was nothing being done to counter those fake narratives being peddled by them. And I noticed that, you know, these entire ecosystem of the left was very well funded. They were making very high-quality films, and you know, it was having a great impact, you know, on our youth, and it was you know, making them believe, you know, whatever the fake narratives they were saying were actually true. So that's how my journey started. I thought, you know, that we should come back, and I thought, you know, of focusing on two things after founding Prachyam. The first was, you know, that it is very important, incumbent, you know, that we come up with counter narratives, you know, to counter those fake narratives. And the second thing was, India is a great country with a great culture, with a great civilization over thousands, hundreds and thousands of years, you know. And in our upcoming film, we are going to prove it with the scientific evidences that Bharati civilization is 50,000 years old at least. So we have to, I thought, you know, we have to put forth the true narrative of Bharat. That was very important. And we have to give the youth a sense of pride, you know, for the culture, for the country, for the civilization, and for Hindu Dharma. So on these founding principles, Prachyam was founded, and we started off on this journey. Now, as you see, what we did, you know, since there was a lot of ideological subversions, as we have talked about in our film, Sahibs Who Never Left, I'm sure some people must have seen Sahibs 1 and Sahibs 2. We talked about ideological subversion in those films. You know, since we went through this worst phase of ideological subversion, I thought, you know, people, they don't have the right sense of history, especially the youth. And we thought, you know, that if we come up with videos with this shared history, and I'm going to show that, you know, then people will connect, you know, because we all have shared, you know, the same history of Bharati civilization, of Bharati Sanskriti. So we started, you know, with this. distilling the essence of struggles, values, and philosophy. Now, it's very difficult, not easy, but we distilled, like thousands of years of history, thousands of years of amazing versatile culture, our civilizational ethos, into some very short films in short form content so that people can watch it intently and they can understand the essence of it. And so this led to actually creating a lot of impact, and I'll show you a video which really went viral in just one day, and I'm going to talk about that. So this is the video we had posted on Deepavali. Some of you must have seen it. YouTube took it off in just 1 hour. And they said, it violates their content. I don't know what content policy they have, why it violated that content policy. It was, the struggle of Ram Mandir movement, where so many Hindus, they laid their lives, It was about that, put it together. In just a few minutes, we have put the entire struggle and the history of Ram Mandir movement. But, in these platforms, on these platforms, these big techs, they have a lot of problems if you talk about, Hindu culture, Hindu history, Hindu civilization, Hindu values, Hindu philosophies. So I knew, so we immediately went into appeal, and then they rejected the appeal also. But then we posted on our Twitter, and it went viral, and in one day we had about 10 million views, and 10 million on other platforms, 20 million views. And they all started tagging YouTube and Sundar Pichai, calling them out, and see that is the power of Hindu unity, that they were forced to put back the video. We reinstated the video, and I said, well, this is not going to end here. So I talked to my friends who are lawyers in Supreme Court, and I said, that we have to sue them, and we have to ask them questions, that why in the first place they removed it, and what actually was their content policy, and who was there sitting there deciding on this, and why, and what we violated. And now, why do they think that, that violation of content is no more there, and they have decided to put it back, So I want the answers to these questions. That's why I want to sue them, And it is very important that we all come together and ask these questions to these people, So here's the video.
अगर है राम में साहस है तो क्यों नहीं आए अभी तक वो तुम्हारी रक्षा को, जिनका वर्णन करने में थकती नहीं हो तुम यहाँ, ये बताओ वो तुम्हारे राम है इस पल कहाँ।
मैं आपको बता नहीं सकती और बयान नहीं कर सकती कहाँ से किस तरीके की धमकी मुझे है।
राम हृदय में है मेरे, राम ही धड़कन में है, राम मेरी आत्मा में, राम ही जीवन में है। राम हर पल में है मेरे, राम है हर श्वास में, राम हर आशा में मेरी, राम ही हर आस में।
राम ही तो करुणा में है, शांति में राम है, राम ही है एकता में, प्रगति में राम है। राम बस भक्तों नहीं शत्रु की भी चिंतन में है, देख तज के पाप रावण, राम तेरे मन में है, राम तेरे मन में है, राम मेरे मन में है, राम तेरे मन में है, राम मेरे मन में है।
I'm a proud Hindu and that's how I was raised.
राम हर आंगन में है, मन से रावण जो निकाले राम उसके मन में है
जय सिया राम
मन से रावण
I'm actually incredibly excited about the future of India. I think India has more promise than any large country in the world. I am a fan of Modi, so.
Jai Shri Ram. Thank you. So I come to the next one, how we have made videos showing the paradoxes. The anti-Bharat narrative, it thrives on the short-term memory. Videos and memes that we have made have become extremely popular, and they have been really loved by the masses, and it is very effective in countering, these fake narratives. So how we have unmasked the hypocrisy, I'll just talk about that, the paradoxes. What we became.
For more than 50,000 years, Bharat Bhumi thrived as the pinnacle of human civilization. But somewhere, somehow, things changed. Mughals became Indians, and Indians became Kafirs. Akbar became tolerant, and Shivaji became fascist. Invaders became Kashmiris, and Kashmiris became refugees. Europeans became richer, and Indians became beggars. Stooges became controllers, and patriots became criminals. Maoists became intellectuals, and intellectuals were labeled bhakts. Terrorists became activists, and soldiers became persecutors. Conversion became secular, and reconversions became communal. Propaganda became the truth, and lies became history. Yoga became scientific, and yogis became unscientific. Jai Shri Ram became conservative, and Bharat Tere Tukde Honge became liberal. Journalists became prostitutes, and honesty became hate-mongering. Our philosophies became global, and our country became primitive. Appeasement became inclusive, and Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas became fascist. So, for the sake of your motherland, act now and learn to be unapologetic.
So we need to understand the history very well. This is 1,000 years of our history in just 2 minutes. What we became. It's very important that we understand that what we became and how we became that. And the sense of history is very, very important. And also an absolute love for your motherland, for your country. And this I have learned a lot from my dear friend Uday Mahorkarji's here. The idea of Bharat first. And he has always inspired me with this idea right from the beginning. And so many people I've met in this journey who have been a great source of strength and inspiration and encouragement too. Now, establishing truth, when we are talking about Hindu resurgence, Now what happens after this intrigue, that we have developed? Providing alternate narratives is equally important. You see, first part was, that we come with counter narratives, those fake narratives being peddled by the left, by the anti-Bharat forces. But then what next? You have to have a very good sense of how to put your original narrative of Bharat to the audience around the world. Because destructing or demolishing something is very easy, but creating is very challenging. So that's how we started, creating. So we came up with this concept of 10 Bharatiya films. These are 10 civilizational films on Bharat to put forth the true narrative of Bharat on the world map. And here it is, as you can see, the Aryans, the fallacy of Aryan invasion theory, dating the Mahabharata, dating the Ramayana, 50,000 years of Bharati civilization, Sahibs who never left. Bharat's gifts to the world, the Guru Shishya Parampara, which is going to be released. You saw the promo here yesterday, demystifying Aghor, healing the world, and Swaraj warriors. And here is the, a very short 1-minute promo of these films.
Our childhoods have been inspired listening to glorious stories of Bharatvarsh, times when avatars walked amongst us. But slowly and deliberately, all of it was whitewashed as mere mythology, and with it, our identity too. We were taught that there is no evidence. But what if it's right in front of our eyes, and new age technology can prove it? Prachyam presents 10 Indic documentaries, a compilation of cutting-edge research that seeks the true dates of Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Indian antiquity. Your story is older than you think.
Thank you. So as you see, these films are at par with the best in the world, with the best of the technologies which is being used in the Hollywood. We have, the same setup with the same team, very, very, very intelligent, very creative, very technical team who are working day and night. And some of my colleagues are here, Kshitij and Abhijit, who have dedicated their lives, for this cause and for the resurgence of Hindus. The challenges that we come across and how do we decide to meet it, the censorship, as I talked about on YouTube, on these big tech companies, on these social media platforms. They shadow ban you. It's very difficult to make out. They will throttle your reach. Monetization is a big challenge, because everything is governed and driven by money. So donations, some people do come forward and give, that helps, but it's not regular. And this craft is very, very expensive. A good quality of cinema is very expensive. Talent, it's a great challenge to find a talent. There's a lot of talent in our country, but as you know, our curriculum and education system, they are all hijacked by the left. So the first precondition that we have at Prachyam Studios is that the talent has to be aligned with our cause. So that's a great challenge that we come across. Then we have to train them. There are lack of proper film institutes in India. In US, you have it maybe in almost most of the major universities I've seen. Algorithm. There's a fixed algorithm, on which the content is made. And if you want to go on those platforms, you have to have, that kind of algorithm on which, your content is created, otherwise it won't get viral. So that's a big challenge. So what we did, to meet that challenge, we came up, with the first Hindu OTT platform in the world. So now, you have all the Hindus around the world have their own OTT platform, Prachyam. It's prachyam.com. Anybody can go. There is a section you can watch free. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe and see the Prachyam original series. There are many series coming up. The current one is History of Invasions on Bharat, right from the 7th century, the Islamic invasions, what we have gone through. So we thought, it is time that we should have our free voice and we should have our own platform. So we came up with Prachyam OTT. So it took care of, the censorship because it was a Hindu-owned platform. Monetization, little bit, it improved because now there was a subscription model in place. And also, there is a provision that people want to sponsor a documentary or a series, they can come forward and say that, I want to sponsor that. So that really, helped us a lot. And of course, it has its own challenges. Talent is solved to a great extent now because we have multiple creators who want to collaborate, who are absolutely aligned with our cause that we are working, and they're content creators, and they said, if they can come and they can exhibit, their work on our platform. So that is a great help, after we started the Prachyam OTT. And the algorithm, as I said, that if you want to go viral, a great piece of classical music will not get viral on these platforms, because they are governed by that algorithm. But yes, if you have your own platform, you can go into more classic kind of content, classic filmmaking. Because I always say that Bharat has got, the greatest tradition of storytelling in the world. Actually, we have taught the world the storytelling. And if you see what great stories we have, if you look at our Itihas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Mahabharata, I say, is the greatest story, greatest script, greatest screenplay in the history of mankind, Or you read the stories of Upanishad or Puran, it's a great tradition. So we have so much to do. Now moving ahead, what Prachyam, would like to be, just to explain that, like you have the curiosity stream, we would like to be the curiosity stream. Or the movie of Indic content, where there is a repository of great films, videos, Indic Bharati content. Create original content. There's so much to be done. When I look, on our great the legacies, of rishis, the great philosophies, the great stories, the great scriptures, there's so much is to be told. So we are slowly working, but we have to scale it up, to a great extent. Develop revenue sharing capacity for other creators. Other creators, content creators can come, and we are working out that we can share the revenue with them, a revenue sharing model with them. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Praveen ji, and we are running short of time already, so I invite Abhijit next, Abhijit Chavda. He's a podcaster, geopolitical analyst, and a scientist, and has his last podcast.
Namaskar, everyone. That's it. All right, thank you. Jai Bharat, Jai Dharma. I would like to thank the organizers of the the World Hindu Conference, for the wonderful work they're doing and for putting together such a wonderful event. Wonderful job, and I would like to pay my respects to my distinguished colleagues on the panel, and I would like to pay my respects to the distinguished audience members. So I think Captain Praveen ji has done such a wonderful job of delineating everything that that needs to be done from the media perspective, that I'm going to stray a little bit from just speaking about the media. I'm going to go a little broader, because that's what I typically do in my content. So a few years ago, I think it's before the pandemic, I was on a TV news channel, an Indian news channel, and we were discussing the Middle East crisis. The Middle East has been in crisis, as we know, since the 1950s, 40s, even before that. It's always in crisis, permanently in crisis. And I half-jokingly said that I have a short solution to the Middle East crisis. Convert them all to Hindu Dharma. It will be over in an instant. And my esteemed co-panelists on that TV debate all blew their tops, right? How can you say that, blah, blah, blah. So that is the power of narrative. The dominant narrative worldwide is that our Dharma, Hindu Dharma, is regressive, it is backward, it is capable of nothing good, and so on and so forth. That's the power of narrative. That's taken at face value, that is taken as self-evident. And that is what we are up against. So what is a narrative? Like Praveen ji said, a narrative is a story. And a story can be based in facts or in fiction. And fiction is lies, facts are just factual evidence. So what we need to do is we need to create our own narrative. Now, how would I define a narrative? I will again say something similar to what Praveen ji said. It's like a 3-act structure. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, who are we? Who are we all? The Bharatiya people, the Hindu people, who are we all? Secondly, where are we coming from? What's our past history so that we understand who we are better? And thirdly, where are we going? What's the way forward? What's the future like? What is our envisioned future, like 100 years down the line, 1,000 years down the line? We need to have these components of the narrative very clear. So to do that, first of all, we have to examine our history. And right now, our history is full of distortions. Our history textbooks are full of distortions. The historians, our esteemed, eminent historians are all anti-Bharat, anti-Dharma, anti-Hindu, Hindu-Dharma. They are all leftists, Marxists. They are the students and disciples of foreigners, the jackals that Praveen ji spoke about, right? So that's what we are up against. So first of all, we need to correct our history. We need to make it fact-based, not falsehoods-based. So our history is immense. I mean, like Praveen ji said, we probably have a 50,000-year-old history of Bharatiya, Bharatiya civilization and culture and the people. The archaeological evidence that I have found thus far goes back at least 10,000 years. The city, the ancient, archaeological site of Bhirana in Haryana, it's almost 10,000 years old. So first of all, we need to examine our history and correct the distortions. The recent history, the 20th century onwards history itself, it's almost something that's in living memory. That's full of distortions. We need to re-examine the great figures that about whom hagiographies have been written, like Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Nehru. We have to re-examine the legacy of great figures like Mr. Bose, like Mr. Savarkar, and so on. So we need to re-examine the recent history. The history of the 18th and 19th century also is full of falsehoods and distortions. Certain individuals who I will not name, who said that Sanskrit is a backward language and Hindu Dharma needs to be smashed out, they are now regarded as great social reformers, right? So that's the kind of distortions we are dealing with. And then we have the history that starts from the first year of the Christian era, 1 CE, in which so much has been completely left out. The great Gupta dynasty, I mean, how much do we know about them? The golden age of India, the great Emperor Kanishka, who did so much for Dharma, he turned Dharma into a global force, the second great emperor who did that after Emperor Ashoka, right? How much do we know about the Karkota dynasty who conquered Central Asia? How much do we know about the Cholas? And so many things. So all of this needs to be done. Now, how do we do this? Right? And this is where I'm straying beyond media, but it needs to be done. We have to reform the education system. We need to create our own educational institutions. We need to create research institutions. There is something called the Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, where the likes of Einstein, Oppenheimer, and so on, they did the research there, a lot of the research there. We need to create such institutes like that, which are focused only on research. And then what we can do is we can create a panel of good historians, top-class historians for each state of India and give them a 2-year, 3-year task of compiling a detailed history of each state of Bharat. Once that is done, all of that can be synthesized into a large, multiple volume set of the overall history of Bharatiya Sabhyata, Bharatiya culture, civilization itself. So this is something that needs to be undertaken, and for that the government has to be involved. The narrative building has to start with the government, and then we can take it forward, right? So the correct narrative has to be set with history. That's what needs to happen. How much do we know about our deep antiquity? The Aryan invasion theory, which later became the Aryan migration theory because they found no evidence of invasion. Now there is no evidence of migration either, so it will become the Aryan tourism theory. Eventually it will be the Aryan picnic theory, right? So that is something that's happening, right? There is so much of our history that we don't know about, especially the deep antiquity, before the eventual demise of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of our culture. So I'll not go into the details because that will take a lot of time. So new research institutions need to be funded. What about yoga? Yoga has been distorted so badly. It has been appropriated by the West. We have hot yoga, we have cold yoga, we have goat yoga, we have dog yoga, we have drunk yoga, and whatnot. Why are we why have we lost control of the narrative of yoga? Think about something similar. There is something called Shaolin Kung Fu. Okay? It's based, I mean, the center of that is the Shaolin Temple. It's a dharmic temple in China. And for those who don't know, Shaolin Kung Fu originates in India, by the way. Okay? So the Shaolin Temple is sets the standards of what is Kung Fu and what is not. And nobody can challenge that. Why don't we have a Yoga Standards Institute in Bharat? Why don't we do that? Is it so hard to do? So the government of Bharat, this is a low-hanging fruit for the government of Bharat. I don't understand why it's not done. I hope somebody hears this, takes it seriously and does it. It's a low-hanging fruit. So create a Yoga Standards Institute in Bharat with branches in every state, and then we will decide what is yoga and what is not. Right? So that needs to happen. Each state, like I said, needs to have its own detailed textbook of its own history, and then we can synthesize that into a multiple volume set. We need to clean up the Indian institutes of technology. It's technology, so why do we have degrees in sociology and whatnot over there? And these humanities departments are infested with anti-Bharat, anti-Dharma intellectuals, so-called intellectuals and academics. And the only research they produce is all about caste and all that nonsense, you know, the standard anti-Dharma, anti-Bharat narrative. So that needs to be done. Why are we using a substantial percentage of the budgets of the Indian Institutes of Technology for giving degrees in something that has nothing to do with technology? So we need to look into that. We need to offer scholarships to good students, to deserving students. We need to find a way to revive Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the common civilizational language in the past 10,000 years of Bharatiya civilization, not just within Bharat, but across the civilized world. We are now currently in Suvarna Bhumi, Thailand. This city, one of its names is Indrapuri, Bangkok. And Bharatiya Sanskriti civilization was spread all across Southeast Asia, all the way up to the Philippines. And the common thread, the language was Sanskrit. It was the high language. It was the prestige language. Even today, if you go to Indonesia, we have names like Megawati, Sukarno Putri, and so on and so forth. Their names are still based in Sanskrit. They still cherish it despite having become an Islamic country. So we need to find a way to revive Sanskrit in Bharat. It is the language that is the oldest in the world. It is a language that is eminently suitable for expressing complicated ideas and concepts. It's extremely well suited for scientific terminology, and we have deliberately marginalized this great language. It is not a dead language. Every single Bharatiya language has its vocabulary, which is rooted in Sanskrit. So we need to revive Sanskrit. We need to prioritize Bharatiya languages. Right? Today in Bharat, if you go, everybody can speak English because it is the language without which you can't get a job. Right? One of the things I love about this great land of Suvarna Bhumi, Thailand, is that no one speaks English. You go and try to go to 7-Eleven or wherever, no one cares. They have self-respect. I mean, look at me. I am more comfortable in English than in a Bharatiya language, which is what the education system and the system has done to me. So I don't want the future generations to be as mentally colonized and so on as my generation. So learn from these places. Thailand, no one speaks English, right? So that's a great example. The Bharatiya calendar needs to be revived. It is the superior calendar. It is way better than the Christian calendar that we use, right? And Dr. C.K. Raju, I would like to give credit to him, has done a tremendous amount of work in proving that the Bharatiya calendar, the Hindu calendar, is the best calendar in the world, right? So we need to do that. So we need to teach Indian Bharatiya history, Bharatiya philosophy, Bharatiya religion, culture, civilization in our textbooks. Why don't we teach that? We are the only nation in the world that doesn't teach. We don't teach our own culture in our school curriculum and all that. We also need to set our geopolitical narrative. Do we understand the difference between a civilization and a nation state? I don't think our children do. The nation state system is an artificial system that began in the Treaty of Westphalia in the 17th century. And historically, we've only had kingdoms and empires. And today we have these artificial nation states. And we only think of Bharat as a nation. We are much more than that. We are a civilization. But do we even know what a civilization is? What is the definition of a civilization? We need to learn that. We need to understand that and understand the difference between a nation, a civilization. We need to have our own national and civilizational identity. We don't have that. We prioritize our sub-national, sub-civilizational identities. I speak so-and-so language. I belong to this linguistic group. I belong to this state. I belong to this so-and-so caste or whatever. That's what we prioritize over our own civilizational identity. So we need to have that, right? We need to understand real politics. I mean, we are taught to ask ourselves in this situation, what would Mr. Gandhi do? Well, I would ask, what would Kali do? Right? So that's another thing. Then we need to have our own media organizations. The world has BBCs and CNNs and Al Jazeera's and Global Times. Where is our big media mouthpiece? Media is propaganda. It's all propaganda. So why don't we also play the game? Why don't we have that? And if we don't have that, then we need to all work together in putting forth the Bharatiya perspective together. That's what we need to do. And one thing I would like to point out is that we always neglect our Far East, the Northeast of Bharat. I have met very few people over here from the Northeast. You know, the Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, all of that. There is a war going on in this region. There is a war for the hearts and souls of the natives of these regions. See what's happening in Manipur. More than half of Manipur is under foreign occupation right now, whether you realize it or not. So we should not neglect our brothers and sisters from the Northeast. We need to bring them into the mainstream because they feel marginalized, they feel alienated. Please understand this is very important. So we need to have a long-term vision. We have to ask ourselves, where do we want to be in 100 years? What values do we want to use as the fuel to take us forward in the next 100 years? We should also have a 1,000-year vision of where we want to be in 1,000 years. That's how a civilization thinks. Understand that the most important demographic is the youth. The youth. We are all in agreement. But what about the youngsters? They are completely disconnected from us. They are disconnected from their culture, from their roots. That is the most important demographic. We have to bring them back into the fold, into the right path. Aesthetics matter. When we use aesthetics in videos, graphic design, we should not use 19th century designs. We should use 21st century graphic technology and make it visually appealing. That's how we appeal to the hearts and minds of the youngsters, because that's how it works today, whether we like it or not. So let me conclude. We need to all work together separately, but coordinate and synergize our efforts. We are all working towards the same goal, but we need to have division of labor. Not everybody can talk about history. Not everybody can talk about geopolitics. Not everyone can talk science. We all can specialize in various things, but we need to all meet together regularly, synergize our activities together, and work together. Thank you very much. Jai Bharat, Jai Dharma.
Thank you, Abhijit ji. And now I invite Mr. Ravi Chand. He is a film and TV producer, born in Fiji, currently lives in Australia. And you can, the entire bio is there. Instead of reading that out, I would hand over the floor to Mr. Chand.
Namaskaram, everyone. I come from Melbourne, Australia. The indigenous name for Melbourne is Naarm, the land of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations. Indigenous Australian culture has remained unchanged for 65,000 years. As such, there are a number of protocols in Screen Agency funding or broadcaster greenlighting for Indigenous Australian content. But before I begin, I want to explain the reason behind our production company, Warrior Tribe Films. In order to tell screen stories anchored in Hindu Dharma within the Western screen industry, we have to speak a language they understand. They will not understand, let alone be able to pronounce Kshatriya. A quick Google search incorrectly attributes caste to Jati and Varna, even foreign to Bharatiya diaspora. Western lens to a point understands Indigenous and the impact of British colonialism, but rarely do they action it with any meaningful change. I understand that tribe can be a loaded term, and I use that to hold up a mirror in colonial spaces, and a resistance and reminder of the British-enforced Criminal Tribes Act. When I say indigenous, I mean the knowledge of the first people of Bharat who practiced Sanatana Dharma. Indigenous does not mean primitive. It is a reverence of Mother Earth, not extraction of her resources. I was born in Lautoka, Fiji. My ancestors were Girmitya. It was a loophole that was used after slavery was abolished. 5-year agreements with impossible labour quotas. Tricked by the British into Africa, the Caribbean, Mauritius, and Fiji. Fiji had the highest suicide rate. They were raped, beaten, whipped, killed, and given food with maggots and meant for animals. Many tried to swim back to Bharat, told that Fiji was not too far from their village. As a consequence, many drowned. Children 7 years old, classified as adults, made to work. Many children in their hundreds died on plantations. Many descendants of Girmitya feel like, to this day, like forgotten children of Bharat. The British ensured conflict with the local indigenous people on every colony, divide and conquer in full effect. Being Girmitya feels like a perpetual state of spiritual homelessness, forgotten by a motherland, not welcome as descendants of slaves in your current one. Although many Girmitya Hindu pujas and rituals have remained in a 200-year time capsule, they never gave up their Hindu Dharma. My parents migrated to Australia in 1982 because of cultural tensions and wanting a better education for their children. I could barely speak English. Everybody was white. I remember thinking as a young child when I started school that my new friends were funny and joking with me. They even gave me nicknames. My poor mother had to tell me that they were racist slurs. Brown wasn't a thing. We were called black. We were the ideal target to pick on, and I was. Sometimes 10 fights a week in high school. I was no pushover. I fought back until I realised that it became a game to them. Who could make me react the most? And with that, the racism got worse. Watching TV and films, I quickly realised people from Bharat weren't treated well. Examples include Indiana Jones, our Kali Mata so badly disrespected, and for some reason they thought people from Bharat ate monkey brains. Hey Hey Is Saturday was a leading TV show in Australia for many years. Kamal, and I'm not mispronouncing his name, he changed his name to be pronounced Kamal because the Australians would call him Camel. Once they smashed white powder onto his face to make him look more white. That was a type of humiliation that was never questioned. To them, it was funny. It was just a joke. Then, a week from my 12th birthday, the unthinkable happened. My mother was killed in a car accident when her car was hit by a speeding van on the way to pick us kids up from school. I lost all contact with my mother's side of the family. I lost all sense of belonging, place, and identity. So to find a place of a place of belonging, I became as Australian as I thought I could. I thought if I was like them, I'd become accepted and the racism would stop. So the transition of assimilation went into overdrive. My father remarried soon after, and my stepmother was deeply dharmic. To her credit, our house became a Hindu temple, open every Thursday night to the general public, sometimes housing up to 200 people for Hindu festivals. I instantly felt incredibly drawn to Shiv Bhagwan and Kali Mata. I came to find out that my paternal family had a very long history of Hindu Dharma dating back countless generations. But outside of home, the racism didn't stop. The Simpsons and Family Guy's cartoons appeared, making it acceptable to make fun of Hindu Dharma and people from Bharat. Apu from The Simpsons was our black minstrel. And what hurt the most was seeing people interviewed from Bharat saying it was funny, that it was just a joke. So my identity became a mixture of Islander and black. I realize now I became scary, unapproachable, and dangerous. I'd rather be feared than targeted was my thought process. But then something incredible happened. 24 years later, after I had lost my mother, I found out that my maternal grandma, my Nani, who I thought had passed away decades ago, was still alive and waiting for me in the same house in Fiji. People laughed at my Australian accent when I spoke Hindi, so as a young boy I stopped speaking it. The first time I had to speak to Nani, mind you, Nani could speak fluent Tamil, Hindi, and native Fijian, but no English. So the first time I went to speak to her in Hindi, I was so nervous. I thought she'd be ashamed of me, but she was just so happy to hear her grandson talk. It was because of her I started speaking Fiji Hindi and questioning my roots and my history, because Nani accepted me for who I was. She understood that life wasn't easy, and above all, I was her blood. When you lose a parent in such a traumatic manner, you never tend to dream of the future as a child, because you know that can be snatched away from you at any given moment. But I dared to dream of life with Nani, my son, and myself. Nani was there so that my son could understand his roots. On my last visit to Nani, she passed away 30 minutes before I could see her, and she never got to meet my son. I felt like such a failure as a father and as a grandson. How could I pass on the magic of our roots without my Nani? I searched online, joined Hindu Dharma Facebook groups, rang temples. I faced vehement abuse online for asking questions, and temples just seemed annoyed to deal with me. If I wasn't doing this for my son, I would have given up. But eventually I came across two people that completely changed my life. Zana Joshi and Dr. Indu Vishwanathan. Please follow their work. They spent many hours with me and sent me their work, a collection of podcasts, videos, articles, not to forget one-on-one Zoom sessions. Whenever I had a question, they were there for me, and they continue to be there. It is why I affectionately call them Didi and Akka. Their work was and is life-changing. Every molecule in my body completely shifted. I began to understand why colonialism wanted to erase my connection to Hindu Dharma. It was our strength within, eternal. I want to make one thing clear. I understand it as an economic resource for Bharat, but I am not Bollywood, nor am I Hollywood. My work is indigenous, dharmic, and my karma. Importance not just on the end result, but also the entire process of filmmaking, a dharmic process of sharing bhakti and gyan through karma. Through my trauma, I connect with current and younger generations so they don't have to go through what I went through growing up. From concept to post-production, I collaborate with elders and Hindu dharmic organizations around the world. Some of my projects include Bharatanatyam, broadcast nationally on Australian broadcast channel ABC, a piece about an incredible Tamil family who banter about what it's like to work together as a Bharatanatyam family and their mother as a guru before their first performance in COVID lockdowns with 200 dancers on stage. Namaste Yoga, broadcast nationally on ABC TV, which we're about to launch globally, and there are flyers on the table over there about it. Please take one, because we are announcing how we can get it out to the Hindu community first, and that is our main priority. Namaste Yoga is about a 10-year-old boy named Shiv who is ashamed of being Hindu. And when he gets into a fight at school, the only way to avoid suspension is by doing mandatory lunchtime yoga classes. Cue, he's appropriating very white homeroom school teacher, Miss Blanche. It is about the cultural appropriation of yoga and the effect that it has on the self-worth of Hindu children when their culture is appropriated, commoditized, and then sold back to them. 5-year grandma. I call it 5 years grandma because I had her for 5 years. Our docu-series in development is a love letter to my son about finding Nani and the importance of our connection to Hindu Dharma as he comes closer to the inevitability of having to deal with racism living in Australia. I have several projects in development. Every step of the way, I face an exhausting task. Funding is determined by Australian screen agencies. None of them have any understanding of Hindu Dharma. Australia's Bharatiya population is now the largest diaspora in the country. And in the same way capitalism drove Western appropriation of yoga, the same will come for Hindu Dharma if we do not have content for our younger generations. We cannot understand, or we cannot underestimate the greed and the audacity of capitalism, particularly in the West. This is an advertisement that ran on Australian TV with significant cultural and religious figures having dinner. The advertisement is encouraging everyone to eat lamb, including Ganesh Bhagwan. Through the grace of Mata, I have come through a number of Screen Australia and state government screen agency talent initiatives. I can leverage available funding, but it cannot be done alone. Dharmic support is needed from producers, media, broadcasters, distributors, philanthropy, from Bharat and the Hindu Dharma community around the world, and everyone in this room. Australia has also signed a film and TV treaty with Bharat. It is a significant moment. My concern is that Hindu Dharma will be conflated with Bollywood. That narrative is already in full force. It is being announced as Bollywood. It is imperative this is treated with a sense of urgency. I want to thank the World Hindu Congress for inviting me to speak with you today. Please don't hesitate to come speak to me. I would love to collaborate with you and work with you. Namaste. Jai Shri Kali Mata, Jai Shri Santoshi Mata, Om Namah Shivaya.
I believe we go into the question and answer now.
Good afternoon, panelists. My name is Sumedha Toli. I'm from Bharat, New Delhi. I'm a lawyer. My question to Rahul Roushan would be, since they build a narrative first, do you think, we need to be really offensive instead of defensive currently and build the narrative first before they do? Because these incidents keep happening. These incidents go unreported. Many incidents, I work very closely with the Dharam Jagran group, which is also a branch of the RSS, and the VHP. I look into a lot of the Dharmantaran cases that happened back in India, Faridabad, where I come from. So do you think we need to really go offensive now? Because now is not the time of playing defensive, It's how do How do you answer that?
I would say, yeah, we have got no choice left but to be offensive. And with someone like Nupur working for me, it comes naturally to her. Earlier, I was, a little, to be honest, I would be a little circumspect because, by nature, I'm not, I don't like offense that much. But I think we really have no choice. I mean, their narrative by default is aggressive and offensive against you. They are openly talking about eradicating Sanatan Dharma and annihilation of this and that. So any narrative that comes from your side, by default will be defensive. I mean, what else would you do? I mean, if the other side is on offensive. So even if we don't realize, actually every narrative we have been pushing, rather putting forward was defensive. So if we actually now have to change that and we have to be offensive, everyone might not like that attitude, might not like that tone, but the importance of going offensive and being offensive in narrative, I cannot really, this is something I have learned myself, witnessing how OpIndia has transformed. When I started it, actually, I thought, that definitely playing neutral was never my game because, that's how I thought it was a sham. Media cannot be neutral. So being neutral was never the plan. But I thought, okay, we would be like, okay, nice guys, but no, it doesn't work. Somebody has to go bad. Somebody has to become the bad boys. And right now, it's very important that we do play offensive. I completely agree with that.
Namaste, panelists. I'm Shweta Bhatia. I'm from United Kingdom. My question to all of you is: should we just not focus? Should we just not focus on building a narrative for Hindu resurgence and building the grand Hindu narrative, but also on accepting of India aspiring to be a Hindu Rashtra, is akin to other countries embracing their religious identity, just like UK is like a Christian country, UAE is an Islamic country, and both are seen as secular, tolerant. So should we also work on that?
I would say that we have to push the narrative that that Hindu Dharma itself is all-encompassing, it's tolerant, it is the most secular of all the so-called religions. We have, for thousands of years, accepted all and sundry into the lap of Bharat Mata, and we have treated them exceedingly well. So that is the first stage in building the narrative that Hindu Dharma and Hindu Sanskriti is the superior Sanskriti that is genuinely like which adheres to the true definition of what they call secularism. And then obviously the dominant Dharma in Bharat is Hindu Dharma. It has always been Hindu for thousands of years, at least 10,000 years. So why should Bharat not revert back to officially being a Hindu Rashtra? I see nothing about that, nothing wrong with that. But we have to start with building the true narrative, the genuine fact-based narrative that Hindu Dharma is the most tolerant, most respectful, and most accepting of all the religions. That's where we start.
I will just add one thing to this, being very unapologetic about it. Bharat was divided along the lines of religion. Pakistan became an Islamic Rashtra. What stops us from becoming Hindu Rashtra?
My name is Pritesh Patel. I'm from the United Kingdom. So I run a platform called British Hindus. In the past few years, we've had a few incidents in the UK. We were shadow banned on Instagram. It's great having an OTT platform, but some of us have to use the mainstream platforms. What are we doing to get legal collateral behind us so that when we have another incident like Leicester, I can tell the truth and not get shadow banned by Islamists?
I just say my background is I have 20 years of marketing experience, particularly in digital media. And so one of the things that I do is create an audience over multiple different platforms. But one of the things that you should be doing is creating your own email list, because they cannot shut down an email list. Wherever you get shut down, you can boost that back up again. So it's crucial that you build that as an asset, and once that becomes an asset, that's also something that you can take to get sponsors, et cetera, and it's yours. Whereas if it's on another channel that's owned by whatever that platform is.
Yes, my name is Mukesh Mani. I come from Perth in Western Australia. And I'm very glad to see my fellow countryman from Fiji, Ravi. Nisambula. And Captain, although you're not a military officer, but I'll salute you as a military officer. I was really pleased to see what you have presented. My question is, as a military officer, you always go on a counter-offensive. Although we were not born in India or Bharat, I've traveled all of Bharat. And I am very conversant with Indian history. My question is, when will it be that the Indian government, all you Swamis, Sadhus, all you scholars, will start putting this curriculum in all Indian school and get rid of the necktie and the shades that your Indian students wear? I think that will be the first and foremost step towards getting the old Bharat Itihas back. And I also salute to you, Abhijit sir, for the way you have put everything in perspective. Now, from the Western media view, as you said, propaganda. So when do we start propaganda in Australia, New Zealand, UK, US, to say who we are as Bharatiyas? I leave that to the whole panel to answer, if you can, please.
So a part of the answer I will give, and then I will ask Abhijit Ji to, give the other part. You have raised a very, very valid question. It is time that we really become offensive. And this has to be, people's movement. Don't expect governments to do anything, on this, because governments, they are bound by constitution, and unless we come forward with some major amendments in the constitution, government is just hand-tied, on that. Second thing is, I always say that if you read any of our scriptures, Krishna did not preach ahimsa in Gita. Bhagwan Krishna said to Arjun that pick up, the weapons and, kill these people because they are on the side of adharma. Tato yuddhaya yujasva. He gave a very clear message. So the subversion was done, in the recent decades. And one of the main person who did was, Mahatma Gandhi, whom we call Bapu. And we had to call him out, This nonsense of ahimsa, was actually taught, to Bharati by Mahatma Gandhi. And since then, we have become very docile, So you cannot, it is very important. We are in mid of a great war right now. And in order to survive, if you want the Bharati civilization and the Hindus to survive, you have to learn to fight the war with all the weapons at your disposal, not only the Shastra, but also the Astra, the Divyastra, and that is sadhana. So be a sadhak, then only you can be a true dharmic warrior.
So let me just add on to what Praveen ji said. We know that ahimsa is the paramo dharma, which means that the hinsak people are the adharmis. And that's what Lord Sri Krishna said, destroy adharma and destroy the adharmis, so as to establish ahimsa. That's the thing. Now to the other part of the question about the propaganda, CNN, BBC, all of that, Al Jazeera, all that is propaganda, media is propaganda. So what do we do about this? How do we fight back? So the fact is that the narrative has already been set. It's been set for the past couple of 100 years by the opposite side, by the Europeans, by the West, and by their collaborators in Bharat and in other Eastern countries. The narrative has already been set. So what do we do about this? The government isn't setting up our answer to Al Jazeera, BBC, whatever. So what we have to do is, like I said, we have to all work together, collaborate together, work together separately, find our own area of expertise or our own area of focus, and work together. It's a people's movement. It is we who work on behalf of the people, and others like you can also come up with. I mean, there is no permission required to start your own media initiative. It's a permissionless world that we live in today. So we all do this together, and that's why that's how we counter this propaganda onslaught. And we have the numbers. That's the advantage that we have. We have the numbers. Nobody has as many numbers as us, so let's all come together and work towards this goal.
Namaskar. My name is Kalpesh Joshi. I am from Toronto, Canada, and I practice Vastu Shastra like globally. And I was hearing all of you. So, like, if we make something like see how the yoga is now like world is taking. So similar way, if we do like Vastu-related documentary or series or something like that, where people will have a better idea that Vastu is Indian science of architecture, like how you can design the place which can bring peace, prosperity, and happiness. So, like, I want your input, like how we can take it. We are a global company, so we have offices in London, New York, Toronto, Brisbane, Australia, and India. But the media is the one who will help and make people understand that how this science of Vastu and Asian thing works. Thank you.
Well, Vastu and Jyotish, they are both great sciences, and I have learned it in a Guru Shishya Parampara in Kashi. So you can definitely, reach out to us, and I think we can come together and make a great film, on Vastu Shastra.
Sabhi ko Ram Ram. Myself, Deependra, I'm representing Godhamik. I'm from Bharat. My question is to Abhijit ji. You mentioned about Indian education system. I mean, when I was in this school, because I took my education from Bharat, Sanskrit was the mandatory education for me. But now it's become optional, and I can see the Sanskrit is now going out from the Indian education system gradually. What do you think about the current government regime? Is there any significant steps taken back by the government to bring the Sanskrit back into the education system? Because it's a highest language of human civilization. So what is your take on this? Thank you.
Thank you. So I remember that, I've read about this, that when India was about to get its dominion status, 47, there was a proposal to make Sanskrit the national language of Bharat, but it did not happen. As we know, it's the civilizational language that we have, and I am of the firm belief that, an opinion that we need to revive this language and make it Bharat's national language eventually, not next week, not next month. It's a 20, 30-year process. It needs to happen. As far as I know, there is, I may be wrong, but there doesn't seem to be any step that is being taken in that direction as of today. But there are positive steps that are being taken by the government when it comes to slowly, progressively cleaning up the curriculum. For example, NCERT going forward, the textbooks are going to mention the word Bharat instead of the colonial word India. So there are steps being taken. Maybe some of them are small steps, big steps. But I think the government is currently focusing on the most pressing matters, because we have a list of priorities that some things need to be taken up first, some things can be taken up later. So I think education seems to be overall, and probably rightly, not at the highest end of the priority list, but eventually it will be taken up, I'm sure. So right now, some small steps are being taken, positive steps, and one hopes that eventually it culminates in major reform.
Okay, I have been signaled that the time is unfortunately over, so we will have to wrap this up. And we obviously are here to interact in person.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I'm Shamin Thakur Rajvansi from South Africa. And for many years, I've been plagued with this problem of the appropriation of our indigenous knowledge. And I've spoken out against it, but I'm glad that we're mentioning it now more often. And I just want to know from the panelists that, something has to be done, because no matter which theories you're reading or which sort of Western books you're reading, you just know it's appropriated knowledge. It's not been paid for. It's not been referenced properly. And it's about time that we get a Bharat referencing system. We have to have it with strong copyright laws. And I think that's the only solution. But of course, we can have an opinion from others. Thank you.
One more question, if you'd allow.
Ravi can take this. Please.
The question.
Yeah. What she asked.
Sorry, I just wanted you to clarify what your question was again. I thought it was more of a statement. Like copyright. Okay. Look,
it's about the appropriation of Indian knowledge systems and Indian knowledge. It's being digested into the Western systems.
Right.
And how do we counter that?
I think we have to call it out wherever possible. A lot of the times, particularly, I see that I actually work for a broadcaster, and my role is diversity and inclusion and calling out these sort of things. Often, within particularly Western structures, this is not on their radar at all. So the first thing that I would do is document it, send it in, and then challenge it. Also speak to other Hindu organisations locally to be able to support that, because you do need the numbers as well to make some sort of impact.
Namaste. This is for Ravi ji and Praveen ji. I'm Ramesh Shah from Houston, Texas, USA. I represent Ekal Vidyalaya. There is a tribal education all over the country. What I would request to you is that there are so many tribals in the country. Would you be willing to take some of those history and take their history and come back and see and show to the world that what our tribals are doing and how we can make change to that part of the country, because they should be brought up to the mainstream. Namaste.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought, you know. We just Prachyam made a film for G20. And we have, very vastly covered, the tribals, the indigenous people of Bharat. And although I would just like to put forth a suggestion, a little correction in the question, we don't have to bring them to mainstream. They are the mainstream. We have to understand and adopt to their ways of life. And we are definitely working in this direction. We have worked and we will work we would love to work in the future. And as the gentleman asked, how much a short film can cost, if somebody wants to sponsor. Well, it depends upon the film, the scope of the film, the logistics involved. It can be anything from 10 lakh rupees to 1 crore. So it depends, what subject, what topic, what logistics we are choosing, And if it is a short film, if anybody wants to sponsor, like on tribals, on indigenous people, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll end the session here. Thank you to all the panelists and the audience. We'll gather back at 2:30 for the next session on entertainment media. So please proceed for lunch.
Okay, sure.